Welcome everyone to Monday Match Analysis. I'm Gill Gross. Jannik Sinner is ATP Finals champion for a second straight year. He wins in Turin yet again without dropping a set, and it is the sweetest possible end to the season for Jannik Sinner, not only because he lifts that trophy, but because he beats Carlos Alcaraz in the final to do so. Final scoreline 7-6, 7-5 for Sinner. There is so much to get into. I have so many thoughts. I struggled to figure out how to even order everything. But in general, the first half of the podcast is going to be very or more Sinner focused. The second half is going to be more Alcaraz focused. Of course, everything in tennis is a relationship between the two men on court, so it's not going to fit that neatly into that structure. But just to give you a little bit of an idea of what's coming, I'm really excited to get into all of this. Let me just say to start off, the most impressive thing to me here is the mental effort by Sinner. There was so much weight on his shoulders. He was defending his home turf, his conditions, his country, and a rivalry he desperately wanted to turn around as far as the overall trend of the results. People like it when I address my predictions head on. I'll please those people this time. I picked Sinner before the tournament because I know that he is the best player in the world in these conditions, that he was unbelievably impressive in Turin a year ago and even pretty darn impressive the year before. And in these conditions, he should reign supreme. I changed my mind right before the final for two reasons. One was Alcaraz reached a level that exceeded my expectations. I did not think that he would be playing so well en route to the final. The second thing was I suddenly realized just how much pressure it was for Sinner to deal with in this final. And again, it goes a couple of ways, because obviously people will say, well, this is just Sinner doing what he's supposed to do and kind of holding serve, so to speak, because he does have his favorite conditions in his home country. But believe me, I mean, come on, all of those things that in theory make it easier for Sinner to win also put more pressure on him winning. He had to deal with that anxiety, and for the most part, he did so beautifully, and that is the most impressive thing for me here. It was not a nerveless performance. There were mistakes early on in the first set tiebreak that could have cost him. The serving in the second set wasn't very good, but overall, the ball striking and in some key portions of the match, the bravery was standout for Jannik Sinner. And we'll circle back to the bravery very quickly in a moment here. But of course, for Sinner, it's unprecedented domination of this event, really, to go back-to-back years without dropping a set. After it had been since 1986 since anybody had done that. The year before, he makes the final and loses to Novak Djokovic. This really does feel like, it's starting to feel like, and it makes logical sense, the most difficult event in the world to beat Jannik Sinner. Sinner has also hit the 90% win rate milestone, and he's the first to do that in back-to-back years since mid-2000s Federer. Contextualizing Sinner's season is a task that I will soon be tackling when I go into the end-of-year content, but let's leave it there for now. And let's talk about a chess match that Jannik Sinner was able to win late in the first set. And it probably saved this from, at the very least, going 3. The second serve of Jannik Sinner was crucial here. I'm going to go back to Wimbledon this year, when Alcaraz had won 5 in a row in this head-to-head, from Indian Wells 2024, and then eventually Roland Garros 2025, saving the 3 championship points. The Sinner team felt as if they needed to increase the level of bravery, and that there needed to be, therefore, a greater appetite for risk in the Jannik Sinner game when he went up against Carlos Alcaraz. They felt as if it was Carlos who was beating Sinner to the punch too often, and that more often it had to be Sinner willing to take a little risk and play with some more fearlessness to try to be more offensive. And at Wimbledon, The main way in which that manifested itself, which was a priority coming in, was big, bold second serves. There were big points in that Wimbledon final where Sinner was under serious pressure and he hit big second serves to catch Alcaraz off guard. Well, this was a repeat of that. We're at 5-6 at out. Set point Alcaraz. Sinner hits an 116 mile per hour serve out wide that goes unreturned. At 1-all in the tiebreak, Sinner hits an 114 mile per hour serve, this time on the deuce side, up the tee, unreturned. Sinner had hit 2 double faults earlier in the set. He didn't care. There was a commitment for Jannik that if Carlos Alcaraz was going to stand up on the baseline, he had to, especially under pressure, he had to back himself to hit big damaging second serves. He could not allow Alcaraz to hit aggressive returns and take control of those points. So he rolled the dice. He had an increased appetite for risk. It paid off. It paid off big time. Now, he also hit a couple of double faults to start the second set, going big with Alcaraz once again standing in on the baseline to give away the early break in the second set, but that didn't end up being nearly as important as what went down the stretch of the first set, because after Sinner hit those 2 big second serves to get the free points, Alcaraz shuffled all the way back. He went 15 feet back on the return. He said, okay, enough of this. I'm moving back so that Jannik can't rush me on the second serve. And there were 2 second serve points in the tiebreak with Alcaraz deep, and Sinner won both points. The aggressive return at that point was taken off the table. Alcaraz was hitting backhands on the ad side from 16 feet back. He simply can't be aggressive off that ball. He can get to neutral, which I think he did, but he cannot hurt Sinner with that return outright. And he lost both points with this strategy. He ended up, from the deep return position, winning only 2 out of 7 points. The close return position, despite those 2 big Sinner victories at the end of the first set, for the entire match, the close return position was actually a lot more successful for Alcaraz. But it's a credit to Jannik to put that doubt into Alcaraz's mind, to back him up, to sort of make Carlos, surrender his aggression in that moment. And it ended up paying off at the end of the first set. So let's zoom into the first set tiebreak, this grand finale of a very high quality, highly entertaining, very tense first set. Let's start at 3-2. This was the first second serve point where Alcaraz was deep. He gets to neutral. They're going backhand to backhand. Alcaraz blasts a backhand wide for an unforced error. That's the mini break for Sinner. Sinner gave the mini break right back by missing a forehand drop shot wide. This was, I think, the first forehand drop shot of the set for Sinner. And as we know, there are going to be growing pains. That shot isn't perfect yet. And here we saw some growing pains. You never want to miss a drop shot wide. But once again, we see that Sinner actually trusts it in big moments. He's willing to use it, which is a big step. And that's the only way that 2 years from now, he's going to be nailing that drop shot, because he's actually deployed it in real match situations. Otherwise, it can't get better. But we're back on serve. It's 3-4. This was a key point. Alcaraz, in a rally, drew first blood with a big forehand inside in that put Sinner on the dead run. And Jannik defends on his forehand, but it's short in the court. And Alcaraz steps in with the forehand drop shot down the line. And Sinner has a ton of court to cover, but he gets there with great speed. And when he gets there, he digs out a nice backhand continental grip lob over Alcaraz's head to win the point. This was a great steal by Jannik Sinner. Service winner Alcaraz. So 5-4, Sinner misses his first serve. Second serve here. Back goes Alcaraz. A neutral rally ensues. Good hitting by both. Alcaraz finds a forehand to attack, goes inside out, approach shot, solid approach shot, Comfortable backhand volley, bad backhand volley. Sinner with another forehand lob for a winner. Good lob by Jannik, okay? Good lob by Jannik, not easy to pull off under those circumstances. But the main thing that decided that point was a very odd volley decision by Alcaraz. Now, if you're watching on YouTube, I'm going to play 2 backhand volleys by Carlos, which to me he played correctly, which he usually does. In my opinion, Carlos Alcaraz has the best backhand drop volley in all of tennis. And when your opponent is at the baseline, unless they're selling out for the drop volley and running in which case, of course, you can expose them with the deep volley. But if that's not the case, there's almost always a greater distance to make your opponent travel if you hit a drop volley. And in modern tennis, guys are so good on the run. Guys are so good at passing. If you're going to volley deep and give Jannik Sinner, in this case, a nice, comfortable running forehand, that's a much easier position for Sinner to be in. If you drop volley, not only is there a better chance that it's a winner, but even if your opponent does get there, at least as long as you hit a decent one, they at least have to hit up on the ball from a low contact point. You're making them dig out a short ball. So in singles, the overall trend, and the first player I saw really commit to this, to be completely honest, is Nadal. Nadal, the vast majority of his volleys were drop volleys. And I would put Alcaraz mostly in that category. For the most part, he always drop volleys. That's why it was very strange that he just put one deep in the court here that was not effective. And then service winner by Sinner on set point. That was it. What was kind of interesting about this tiebreak is the fact that Alcaraz did get on offense. He did get forward. I think the points were looking to be mostly on his terms, and then it was Sinner who was able to come up with some good scrambles and a couple of steals from defensive positions. So all the time when these two play, there are going to be moments in which Alcaraz beats Sinner in Sinner's bread and butter, rhythmic baseline rallies where Alcaraz's pure power ball striking outduels Sinner's, right? And that would be an example of Alcaraz beat Sinner in his own game. This was kind of what I would say Sinner beating Alcaraz in his own game a little bit, because it was Alcaraz failing to finish against Sinner's defense and counterattacking. Anytime you have somebody at the net, it's a counterattack. You're not going to defend passively with your opponent at the net, right? But yeah, it was kind of a bit of a role reversal here. And that decided the first set. It was also, I would say, a good Sinner serving performance in the first set as far as damage and purchase goes. Sinner hit 34% first serves unreturned, and he was upper 60s until very late in the set. Upper 60s as far as percentage. Not up above 70, where we've seen him for so much of the tournament, but upper 60s, still very good. And you felt okay. You definitely see Sinner performing well on serve, getting a lot of unreturnables. In fact, in the first set, he was 34% on his unreturned serve percentage. That's total serves, not first serve. So first serve, you could imagine, he was well up above 40. You know, almost half of his first serves were unreturned. So in these Turin conditions, great spot serving by Sinner, he was getting a lot of purchase. One thing that I didn't see coming, I don't think anybody did. You know, we thought if we're talking about a Sinner win, then the serve is a big part of it. Not in the second set. In the second set, Sinner had easily his worst serving set since the US Open final. His percentage was 47%. And as a whole, it would be kind of tough to make an argument, that Sinner won this match because of his serving, even if it played a good factor in the first set. Because in the second set, kind of had nothing to do with it. Why? Like, how do we kind of make sense of this? Well, Hawkeye revealed an interesting little relapse in Sinner's technicality, where his ball toss was on average a little bit further out inside the court. One of the adjustments that they made was to put the ball toss further over the head, along with some of the other stuff, deeper elbow position, more coil of the shoulders. But Hawkeye did reveal that on average, Sinner's toss was a little bit further out in front. I thought I clocked at times some toss height inconsistency, some mistimed deliveries. So overall, the rhythm went out of whack. There is no doubt that Alcaraz applies more pressure onto Sinner's serve than any other opponent. I think if you're Sinner, you're glass half full. You had a bad serving set. You won the match anyway. You try to diagnose it, and you still feel overall really good about yourself because you've made improvements technically that clearly work. And I think long term, yes, this was not an encouraging serving performance from Sinner in the second set, but I think long term, you still feel really good that you figured stuff out and that moving forward, you're going to be at the very least able to diagnose the habits that you're looking to avoid under pressure. And at the end of the day, as we kind of jump back into this more focused analysis of the match, Alcaraz was not good enough to take advantage in this second set. He was not good enough. And the rest of Sinner's game stayed very sharp. In fact, he was cleaner in the second set off the ground than he was in the first set. And this was ultimately a great performance from Jannik Sinner in the 9+ shot rallies. I'm sorry, I'm going to go back a little bit. It was a great performance in the 9+, but let's include the 5+ as well. In the second set, Sinner won 13 out of 18 points in rallies 5 shots or more. Let me say right now, we will address the physical stuff with Alcaraz. Right now, I'm talking about what happened in the match, and then I'll get more into the why on the Alcaraz side, but I want to keep it Sinner focused for a moment here. Sinner was dominating the baseline exchanges in the second set in particular. And a lot of it was simple choices, full discipline, right? So very consistent. Forehands in, Sinner 88%, Alcaraz 82%. That's a big gap. Sinner, really good day on speed as well. I felt as if he really, especially as the second set got a little bit later and he realized that he was the more consistent player on the day and that he was more comfortable in the longer exchanges, he started going hard middle a lot, which is just a rally extender. Sinner knows that if he takes a ball hard deep middle, that's a ball that just completely handcuffs Alcaraz's ability to make progress. It doesn't necessarily win the points for Sinner because you're not spreading the court, you're not introducing width, but you are not letting Alcaraz, you're not opening up any angles for Alcaraz to exploit. So as Sinner started to feel very comfortable winning those long rallies, I saw a lot more balls deep middle. And one of the big improvements from the US Open final for Sinner was the forehand. He had a far better forehand day overall compared to the US Open final, which that was the one part of Sinner's game which was uncharacteristically shaky as far as making mistakes. And this match was a little bit more what we would normally see in this head-to-head, where Alcaraz's forehand was a little bit more venomous, a little bit more aggressive in terms of opening up the court and finding, a lot of first strike success, a lot of winners, but more inconsistent. Where Sinner's forehand was nearly flawless. He almost never missed it unless he was really pressured, but was also quite damaging on it. Had a really good kind of happy medium between the two. It's just a good forehand day. Now, let me go towards Alcaraz more a bit. He was not good, in my opinion, in the second set. He was good in the first set. He was not good in the second set. And again, I'm going to talk about the hamstring, but not yet. Not yet. The first strike tennis held up pretty well for Alcaraz. He had a lot of service games where he won a lot of kind of quick points, first serve forehand, early firepower, kind of lightning strike tennis in these fast conditions. That kind of worked. Anytime things got sort of even and he had to execute off the ground for any sort of extended exchange, things really fell off the wagon. Now, he did get that early break with the 2 Sinner double faults. The first thing I want to highlight is from 3-1 to 3-all, this little stretch here. Now, at 1-3, Sinner was serving, missed all of his first serves in this game. And Alcaraz played a really sloppy return game. This was the first time I'm like, I know Alcaraz was up the break, but as I was watching, I thought, this really is not looking great for Carlos. Lo and behold, at 3-2, Alcaraz's next service game, he continues the mistakes. And ultimately, between those two games, across these two games, there were 7 points in which the serve actually came back in play. So if it's a service winner, a double fault, which Sinner had one of them in here, that I'm not counting. I'm just looking at the points in which the return came back in the court and they actually had to play tennis beyond the serve. There were 7 of them. Alcaraz made 5 unforced errors on the 7. He won 1 point. Alcaraz won one of the points with a couple of good forehands and a winner cross court on the forehand. And then there was the break point where Sinner shanked the return. It landed in, and then eventually he hit a forehand drop shot winner. But that's terrible sloppiness when you make 5 unforced errors with 7 opportunities to make an unforced error, right? That was the first moment. It was like, all right, that was a lapse. Now we're back even. And down the stretch we go in the second set where, certainly there were some interesting things going on, but ultimately both holding serve, solid first strike tennis from both. If we skip ahead to the 5-6 game, which is going to be the last game of the match because Alcaraz is going to be broken. This game was a bonanza of tactical mistakes by Alcaraz. Not technical mistakes, not mistakes in execution, dumb decisions. That's what it was. Let's go through all of them. The least egregious was the first point Alcaraz lost, where he didn't technically do anything horribly wrong. He hit a kick serve out wide. He served and volleyed, and Sinner hit a good low return. Half volley by Alcaraz went wide. In the greater context of this, however, a kick serve in these conditions into Sinner's backhand, don't love that as a serve. 2, this was in the midst, as I'll delve into in more detail, of one of the worst volley performances I've seen from Alcaraz. As cold and unconfident as I've seen him at the net. So I was scratching my head with that in mind at the serve and volley, especially on a 15 love point at 5-6. Next, at 30-15, after Alcaraz hit a service winner, Alcaraz is running to his right, having to probably play defense, or if we're being generous, a neutral ball. He's running to his right. He's hitting a running forehand, and he goes to the drop shot. And Sinner gets up to it easily for a forehand down the line approach and an overhead. A horrendous ball to drop shot off of. Drop shots are offensive. Drop shotting when you're in defense almost never works. Now it's 30-all. Good point by Alcaraz. a big serve and a bunch of forehands. That's the one thing. He did do that well in the second set. The forehand was very damaging. He was really hitting out on it. It was dangerous. He missed some, yes, but it was very dangerous. Now it's 40-30. Game point. Second serve. Kick serve out wide. And a pure, early on the rise, backhand down the line, return winner by Sinner. Excellent return. Credit to Jannik. It was also the wrong second serve. In the match, on the ad side, Alcaraz had hit 4 body serves on the second serve. And that was the main serve that he hit on the ad side. He hit 4 of them, didn't have to hit a lot of second serves throughout the match. All 4 of them were great. All 4 of them were effective and got Sinner off balance. The one point that he lost was the double mishit on break point that hit Sinner's frame twice and just happened to land in. Why hit the kicker out wide into Sinner's backhand once again in these low bouncing conditions? Just not the right second serve. Go to the body. That serve, the body serve, was one of the main positives for Alcaraz in the match. Why aren't we hitting it here when it's worked so beautifully the whole match? Now it's deuce. Alcaraz with a backhand cross-court approach, a very lethargic close, not a damaging approach shot. Didn't really have an opportunity really to come in here. Didn't have a big advantage in the point. And Sinner is going to easily hit a backhand pass low up the middle to force an error. I don't know if it was up the middle, actually. I don't have that in my notes. But a low passing shot that forced a volley error. And this is just a bailout prayer of a net rush. That's all this is. You're praying. I don't know. It's just a low percentage net rush. It's almost never going to work. So you look at shot selection and decision making, and it's not always about what shots you're choosing. It's also what you're doing with your off-ball movement. This was just silly. It was just a silly decision. Add out Alcaraz in a neutral rally, backhand cross-court wide into the alley for an unforced error. Nothing particularly egregious in terms of Alcaraz's decision-making here, but another neutral backhand unforced error, rally 9 shots or more. Again, we see Sinner's just solid, simplified approach. He's not going to miss in that scenario. He's going to keep the ball deep in the court. And at that point in time, he was very confident, rightly so. He was very confident that it would be Carlos Alcaraz likely to shoot himself in the foot in any extended exchange. That's what happened. The other thing I'll point out in this second set, then we'll get to the physical part. This was the biggest peculiarity of this match in the second set in particular. Alcaraz's backhand volley. I have never seen him lose confidence on his backhand volley like this. It was a total disaster. Not just on the critical 5-4 first set tiebreak point, which I've already broken down. But if you look at the second set, I'm pretty sure every time Alcaraz hit a backhand volley, he lost the point. I think. No, I think there was one good one, actually. I think there was one good one. But let me kind of rattle off the bad ones. 3-2, 30-15. Comfortable backhand volley where he kind of lost balance and he put it wide into the alley. 4-all, love all. High backhand volley. This one was over the shoulder, over the head, I think even. And he cut it wide. The reaction from Carlos there was extreme. He was furious with himself. And he looked to his box and he was yelling about something, specifically with his backhand volley. He was shadowing it and yelling at his box. Now, 5-all, 15-all. This was a forced approach. This was one of these approaches which didn't make any sense because he didn't put Sinner in any kind of trouble. And it was a low, difficult volley, and he was passed on the next ball. Now, I will say, Of all of the forced approaches, this was maybe the best one because he did have some open court. And I would say as far as passing shot difficulty, this for Sinner was at least a 5 out of 10. So it wasn't like a really easy pass, but it was a pass that he'll usually make. Not a very good time to approach. Alcaraz couldn't get any speed on this approach shot because Sinner actually hit a very deep ball on a forehand cross court previously. So it was a slow approach. That gave Sinner time. Later in the game, 40-15, pretty simple backhand volley. He did the same thing that he did in the first set tiebreak. He floated it deep, and Sinner had an easy forehand pass. That one was eyes closed. Jannik's going to make that every time. 5-6-15 love. That's the serve and volley. Tough half volley there for Alcaraz. That wasn't really the volley's fault. But he missed it completely. Usually, at least, he probably puts it in the court. 5-6 deuce. This is the one that I've already talked about right before the championship point. Forced approach, dipping pass by Sinner, volley miss. So out of 8 backhand volleys in a little more than a set, 7 of them lost him the point. 4 of them were manageable volleys that were misplayed. And then 3 of them were reckless tactics. Reckless tactics where he came in when he really didn't have enough of an advantage in the point. Sinner, he did not make any very difficult passing shots. That's the reality. Yet, Carlos, in the second set, was 3 out of 9 on net points. Alcaraz coming into this final was tremendous at the net. He had been there often, and he was winning 82% of his net points throughout the week. Today, he was 7 out of 15 in total, but it was the second set when he really got burned, winning only 3 out of 9 net points. Again, in that second frame, 3 out of 9. Now, let's talk about the physical issue. Alcaraz felt something in his hamstring late in the first set when he was lunging for a Sinner serve. Took a medical timeout at 5-4. So we do have to reckon with what effect that had. We have to reckon with that. And this is part of tennis. This is my least favorite part of tennis, especially because as an analyst, this is where you get into a topic that generally turns into fan base warfare, and all objectivity goes out the freaking window when it comes to physical issues because everybody's trying to twist stuff in their favor as far as fan bases are concerned. But my job is to talk about what I see and try to analyze it. Let me say this first. Sinner has been inflicted with this physical stuff going wrong in this head-to-head more often than Alcaraz. Let me go through the history. And the reason I want to go through this history is to point out that in tennis, this happens, right? Alcaraz cramped in Miami 2023. He cramped. Sinner fell at Indian Wells and started to look pretty slow in the second half of the match. Just didn't seem to be moving all that great. That was Indian Wells. That was 2024, last year. Roland Garros semifinal last year. No injury, but Sinner in the fifth set started to look very tired. And we know that coming into the tournament, his preparation was terrible because he had physical issues, a hip injury and then an illness. Cincinnati, most egregious of them all, couldn't even finish the match. Sinner got sick and retired. And now this, Sinner, Alcaraz in Turin, he tweaks his hamstring. And I have no doubt that Alcaraz was compromised. What's the evidence? What did I actually see? I saw that when Alcaraz had a situation in which he had to push himself to the extreme limits of his movement, he declined to do so. 2 drop shots, 1 Sinner forehand, 1 return that he didn't really lunge for. The 2 drop shots I'll show footage of here if you're watching on YouTube. These are drop shots that they were good drop shots by Sinner. He was in a position where he probably was going to win the point with these drop shots. But I think 100% Alcaraz gets his racket on it. I think. I know that an Alcaraz at 100% at least goes into the ball hard with a good, aggressive, sliding effort. And he didn't even do that. He pulled up. That's not really normal. That said, Alcaraz's movement was not terrible. It was not bad. It was a little compromised, but it was not very, very bad. It was good enough for him to compete hard in this match and to challenge in this match. And this is what Carlos even said after the match. Now, Jannik and Carlos, they are class acts. So you do have to, in all of these cases, you always are going to expect them to downplay the physical stuff because they want to give full credit to their opponent. Mind you, that's not my job, right? My job's to analyze, not to be a class act, So it's different for me, but for them, they're usually going to do that. What Carlos said, I believe, though, was honest and accurate because he said, look, I was able to play. I was able to move pretty well. I fully agree. He was able to move pretty well. But then he also admitted that it was in his mind, that he was thinking about it. And now let's go back to what I just talked about in regards to the second set, where I just kind of ripped Alcaraz apart for his 5-6 game for making mistake after mistake after mistake tactically. That, to me, was what happened here. He got cloudy head and didn't play smart. And I don't think that would have happened. If he was feeling good physically. But you also have to still maybe put some blame on Carlos for that. Not give him a pass fully. Because, you could say that he was playing low percentage tennis and forcing net approaches when he didn't necessarily have to. His movement was still good enough to hang in baseline points. Now, I have seen scenarios in which a player's movement is so compromised that it's clear that they must go for broke, that is their only option. That may be due to an injury, that may be due to cramping or fatigue, but there are certainly scenarios in which you say, you know what? Your hand is being forced. You just have to go for broke. I don't think Alcaraz was at that point. I'm going to give an example here. How about Lorenzo Musetti against Alex de Minaur? Was his movement 100%? No, sir, it was not. He was not his normal explosive self. He was slow. He was off his regular pace. But I praised him after that match for hanging in there and still committing to playing tough tennis. Carlos didn't really do that. He didn't do that. He was reckless with his decisions. Maybe he didn't have to be. Let me back it up with some data. Alcaraz steal score for the match down to 27%, but it was really the second set in which you saw it completely go away. 22% in the second set. You just really didn't see him scrambling very well, if at all, for that entire set, which I will reiterate, that's not normal Alcaraz. Remember that forehand down the line that he hit early on in the match on the dead run, full stretch, insane get? Like, none of that was really happening in the second set. Remember, the steal score was 39% against Sinner in the head-to-head coming in. So that was a huge reversal, 39%. And then in this match, it goes down to 27%. Tough to defend in these conditions. You'd expect it to go down. But then 22% in the second set is absolutely in the basement for Carlos Alcaraz, who is the leader on the ATP Tour in steals. Now, credit to Sinner. Let's talk about the varied finishes, because You can say that Alcaraz pulled up on the 2 drop shots in the second set, but they were 2 good drop shots. They were still drop shots that put Sinner in great position to win the point, even if Alcaraz was 100%. And at the end of the day, he was 2 for 2. By the way, I predicted Sinner 2 drop shots per set. That was one thing I believe I did get right. Let me check that. Yep, 4 drop shots in the match for Sinner. So I did get that score. There was a big deuce point at 3-all in the second set where I thought Sinner did a tremendous job of introducing angle on a middle forehand. Great width. And this was, I would say, late in a long rally where Alcaraz was already potentially feeling the legs a bit, and Carlos kind of slapped a running forehand into the bottom of the net. But credit to Sinner here for introducing some width. I thought he did a better job of that in this match. But mostly, this was not a totally new playbook for Jannik. This was simple, smart tennis from Sinner, taking what was there, bold at times when he needed to be, particularly with the second serves late in the first set, opportune on short balls with a much more Sinner-like performance on the forehand in particular, where he was absolutely deadly when he had chances to attack off of short balls on his forehand, unlike the US Open. But he was also very clean, very consistent, allowing Alcaraz to make the mistakes. Now, for Carlos, it wasn't all negative. His forehand defense, especially in the first set early, I thought was impressive. I thought he showcased some of that abbreviated forehand defense and that pace absorption at points throughout the first set. The body serves were surprisingly good, very effective for Alcaraz. Overall, in the first set, the level was extremely high. And then in the larger picture, zooming all the way out, for a last word on Carlos, I think he should feel very good about this week on a fast indoor hard court, making the final of this event for the first time, playing Sinner very close in the first set, having a physical issue for the remainder, which will sort of ease the pain for Carlos as far as this loss is concerned, but it will not dampen the victory for Jannik Sinner, which is massive at any rate. He simply had to have this one. As I said at the top, he did a glorious job handling the pressure, and he successfully defended his home turf. What a dominant run it was once again at the ATP Finals. And kudos to Sinner for a outstanding, not just a good, an outstanding week of tennis on the whole. All right. That's your 2025 season, but plenty more content coming up the pipeline. I'm going to try to do some fun interviews throughout the offseason, and next Monday Match Analysis will be the Monday Match Analysis Awards. Hope you enjoyed. Don't forget to subscribe. I'll see you next time.